In this video, I'll guide you through installing Linux step by step on your own computer. These steps include choosing a distro, of which there are many. I'll give you a few examples. The actual installation of the operating system. I'll do my best in guiding you through how to install the correct drivers for your NVIDIA graphics card, if you have one of those. We'll get the vtubing to work. It's not too difficult, but there's a few hurdles that don't exist on Windows. We'll get to it. There's a couple of audio tools that I personally like using when recording and streaming to modify my microphone and also separating audio, which I have not found a way to do in Windows yet. We'll install a video editor, though to be fair on Linux there's only really two choices, Kdenlive and DaVinci Resolve, both of which have their ups and downs. And if you're the type who likes to store your stuff on the cloud, we'll get OneDrive, Dropbox, and Google Drive to work also. So yeah, this is a bit of a different video than usual, but it's just going to be nice and chill when we're going to install an OS. So yeah, let's get down to it. Okay, so here I have a Windows machine. It's a Windows 10 because it literally doesn't support, I don't have the requirements to install Windows 11, which is insane. It's a quite old computer, but we'll install Linux on it and get it to work. If you're the type of person who streams or plays mostly just one game, I highly recommend that you check out this website, protondb.com, for your game. This is just to check if your game is compatible with Linux, since it would suck to install an operating system just to find out that you can't play your games on it. With that said, 95% of all games are compatible on Linux, but it's still a good idea to check if you play just the one game. I never check, to be honest. My games just work. The only real games that don't work are AAA releases with kernel level anti-cheat. And if you play one of those, I think Call of Duty, Modern Warfare is worked. So if you like to play Call of Duty Modern Warfare, for example, it straight up doesn't work. Gold Games runs perfectly, usually, out of the box. I have never had a problem. Bronze Games, you might have to reconsider. There was a Silver, runs with minor issues, but it's generally playable. It kind of speaks for itself. And there's a fourth rating, which is Platinum, which just runs perfectly out of the box. It's just straight up supported on Linux. The first distro I'd like to bring up is Ubuntu, probably the most well-known one that you might have heard the name before if you've heard of Linux. It is maintained by a company called Canonical. You can expect enterprise levels of support. It's based on Debian, which is Debian is a separate distro. And what that means is basically if it works on Debian, it works on Ubuntu, such as you would not find a .exe in Linux. In terms of Ubuntu, you would find a .deb, which is the Debian, and that just works on Ubuntu and all distros based on Ubuntu and Debian, of course. As of late, Canonical has been leaning into AI a lot and integrating it into Ubuntu. You do with that what you will. I'm not a huge fan, personally. They release a new LTS version of Ubuntu that is a long-term support every 2 years with 5 years of security patches for older versions. So the current LTS is from 2026, and the previous one would then be from 2024, and so on. Because it gets updated every 2 years, it's a very stable distribution, and is usually the last one to get the newest software. The next distro I'd like to bring up is Linux Mint, another one you've probably heard of. This one is based on Ubuntu, which means it also gets a new LTS every 2 years. This is probably the distro that's most reminiscent of Windows in terms of look and feel. It has a very early 2000s aesthetic, which makes it feel very old, in my opinion. But it works. It's a very beginner-friendly distribution, and it's the one I've convinced my girlfriend of trying to use. A third option might be Fedora Linux, which in my opinion is an awful name, but we'll skip over that. It hits a sweet spot, I think, between being bleeding edge and being stable, with a new release every 6 months, and each release is supported for just about 13 months. You get a lot of options when it comes to installing Fedora, so you can pick just exactly what you need. The final distro I'd like to bring up is Bazzite, which you've probably also heard. It's supposed to be gaming friendly, comes with a lot of packages pre-installed specifically for gaming, and oh look at that. Yeah, with a lot of packages specifically for gaming. This one's based on Fedora, so it also gets updated every 6 months. Even when downloading the ISO, you can choose exactly what kind of, hang on, what is this? That's my graphics card. Oh, would you look at that? It comes with a Steam gaming mode. I don't quite know what that means. One thing I would like to bring up though is that the ISO is frankly huge. This one is 7.7 gigabytes. So that's a lot to download and also a lot to flash to a USB drive. For this video, I'm going with Fedora because I just think it hits a very sweet spot in terms of reliability and getting updated with the latest and greatest software. Specifically when it comes comes to your desktop computer, you got two options. You got the Fedora workstation and you got Fedora KDE Plasma desktop. A Fedora workstation comes with the GNOME desktop, which is supposedly reminiscent of a Mac interface, if you're interested in trying that out. I usually go with KDE Plasma, which is extremely customizable right out the gate and also fairly reminiscent of Windows in its default state. I'm just going to click download now. Typically, what you have is either an AMD or an Intel x86-64 system. Very few computers use this option, and I believe this one is mostly for microcomputers and stuff like that. So I'll just go ahead and hit download on the live ISO. A simple 3.1 gigabyte download. While that's downloading, I think it's very important that you back up all of your stuff. For the sake of showing it off, I will be installing dual boot, meaning when you turn on the computer, you can decide whether you want to boot into Windows or boot into Linux. But just in case, I still recommend that you back up your stuff somewhere else, just in case something goes horribly wrong. It likely won't, but just in case. Probably the most important thing to back up is your vtube stuff. Your vtubing model. So if you go to Steam, you right click on VTube Studio, you go to manage, and then you browse local files, then you go to VTube Studio data, and inside of streaming assets, you should have your vtubing model somewhere. Mine is right here, with my settings that I would like to save. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna drag it over here to documents. I'll just copy it over there. Other things you might want to back up is if you have any art, if you have like important files, or if you have like work or homework, whatever that might be. All of this is very important stuff to save. This is the vtubing model, of course. Another thing, if you've been streaming for a while, is you probably want to, in OBS, sorry for the little confusing layout here, in OBS you might want to export all of your scenes. You can also export your profiles. Currently I'm recording, so I can't. Maybe if I open another one. Okay, opening another one seems to have worked. You might also want to export your profiles. All of your settings and stuff is hidden in there. So that might be a good idea to also save. Let's just export this. So here it is, untitled. That was the name of the profile. So if we just quickly zip all of this up, we'll call it Windows Backup. Now to store it somewhere, I like to use Proton, which I'm not signed into. Give me a second. Simply just drag it in here and wait for it to be done. There we go. My Windows backup.zip is now uploaded. Now that we've gone through all of that, saved our backups and put it somewhere safe, the ISO should be done downloading. And now that it is done, we need a tool called Rufus. I'll put a link in the description in case you can't find it yourself for some reason. Hit the exe, just the newest version, that works fine for me. Open up the downloaded file, click yes when it asks for permissions. And here it is. This is Rufus, super simple. Plug in your USB drive. There it is. I have an 8 gigabyte USB drive right here. And then we just simply select the ISO by clicking the select button. And that's the one we downloaded just before. You don't need to fiddle with any of the other settings. You just press start. Choose the recommended mode, I guess. I'm sure this is fine. I'm just gonna click yes and hope for the best. And a nice little warning that everything on the USB drive will be destroyed and it is irrecoverable, meaning you can't get it back. You just click OK if you're ready for that. You accept the consequences. And it's just working. Just let it work and it'll tell you when it's done. I just remembered I didn't actually tell you what Rufus is doing right now. What's happening is it's taking the ISO file that we downloaded, the Linux distro, and it's creating an installer out of that. It basically means you can boot your computer from the USB device and boot directly into the installer. That's probably gonna be cut out because it all makes sense, doesn't it? Once it's finished flashing, it's gonna say ready because it's ready to start again. We don't want to do that. Now you're free to close down everything and restart your computer. Now that the computer is off, the next step is to keep your USB stick plugged in and turn it on again. While it's turning on, you should be spamming, in my case, I think it's delete. Spam delete to get into the BIOS menu. The monitor will tell you, there it is, press delete, F2, whatever. Once you're in this menu here, well, yours might look different. It's depending on your motherboard, I believe. But you should look for something called boot priority or boot order or something like that. In my case, I have a boot menu down here. Which if I click that, it's going to pop up with this. And I'm going to select which disk I want to boot from. And in this case, I want to boot from my USB flash drive. And there we go. Now we're in Linux almost. I'm just gonna press Start Fedora Desktop Live and navigate with the arrow keys. Press Enter to select. And now it's gonna be a little while and then it'll boot up into Linux Fedora. Here it is, Fedora. And now we're booted into Fedora, as you can see. Currently, nothing is installed yet, but you are free to mess around with any settings that you might want to mess around with to see if everything works before installing, such as maybe switching to dark theme. That works. If we restart the computer, it's gonna go back to the default settings from before because nothing is installed yet. It is running straight off of the USB that you flashed. To install Fedora properly, or any distro really, there should be a little install button right here, or maybe it's on your desktop up here, for example. Just gonna click this giant button that says install to hard drive. Little thing pops up, you don't have to worry about it, and the launcher will start soon. So the first thing Fedora at least is gonna ask you is to select a language. It's defaulted to Danish for me because I don't know why it has actually, but that's where I am. I don't want that. I want English. Oh, I can't spell. English, and give me United States, why not? And it correctly guessed my keyboard. Just click next down here in the corner. And the next part of the installation is to select whether or not you want to dual boot with your previous OS or not, such as it's defaulted to share disk space with other operating systems. That is if you want to keep Windows, and you can choose between booting into Linux or Windows when you start your computer. You can use the entire disk, which is kind of self-explanatory. Then you're just raw dogging Linux all the way through and no chance of going back to what you have on your Windows at the moment. And then you can customize, which is quite advanced. To show it off, I'm just going to share disk space with other operating system and then click next in the bottom again. Now that I click next, after choosing to share disk space, it has opened up this dialog where you can see a bunch of Windows partitions. Basically, Windows has distributed different types of data across your disk. Over here, you can see the space that all of them take. Total hard drive space is 240 gigabytes, and the basic data is 239 gigabytes. This is the user data. This is all of your data. What you want to do here then is click this little narrow down icon, which allows you to choose to resize this partition. For sake of demonstration, I'm just going to leave Windows with 64 gigabytes, which should be plenty for Windows, considering I don't plan to go back into it. And it says shrink to 64 gigabytes. So the 239 becomes 64, which means we are freeing up a total of 175 gigabytes in this case. It might be different for you. Next up, just click reclaim space. Next step, it asks if you want to encrypt your entire hard drive. I recommend you don't do that because it's a very, very surefire way to lose all of your data, unless you know what you're doing. And I don't. All right, when I click next, it gave me this warning of a boot drive has less size than what is recommended. I don't know why. The installer should have done this for me properly. Hopefully you won't run into that error. Currently, I don't really care. It's gonna be working just fine, I'm sure. The next step is review and install, where it'll basically give you a little overview of the changes you've made, such as Windows drive from 239 gigabytes to 64 gigabytes. And then we can see how it's formatting the Linux drive. This third one, the one with just the slash, is the one we're interested in. So Linux will have a total of 173 gigabytes to work with in my case. Down here, we just select I understand that the partitions will be modified, meaning that you understand you will lose all of your data that is on the disks. It's going to resize parts of the drive that aren't being used. So all of your Windows files should still be intact. But we backed up all of the important files, so it's fine. And we just click install and wait for the magic to happen eventually. Hey, editing desync here. I just realized I forgot to mention, some distributions will ask you what type of file system you would like your partition to use. In my case, it has automatically chosen BTRFS, better file system, I believe it stands for. You can use that, or you could use ext4. I'm not entirely certain of the differences, but those are the latest and greatest file systems available on Linux. Anything else is older and outdated. You should use either BTRFS or ext4 if you can. And there we go, my installer finished, and it's telling me to reboot my system, which I will happily do down here, and I'll shut it down for good measure. Now that the computer is off once more, I would recommend that you plug out the USB drive before you boot it up again, just in case. Now when you boot up your computer, you'll be met with this screen. It might be a little bit intimidating, but it's really not. You can navigate it easily by pressing the arrow keys, and you press enter to select. If you don't press anything during the first 5 seconds, it's gonna automatically boot into the default option, which is usually the top one. We've installed Fedora. Fedora has so kindly included a rescue partition kind of thing, where in case you mess up anything on your proper partition, you can boot into this, fix it, and then boot back into this. The third option down here is the Windows Boot Manager, which boots into your Windows partition if you chose to dual boot. I'll just go ahead and boot into Linux and I'll be right back. Linux is now booted up, and this is something new that Fedora has decided to do in version 44, at least on KDE Plasma, where there's a little bit of initial user setup. Usually, you've done this already during the installation part, you know, when you had the USB plugged in. But if we just press begin setup here, it's going to ask us to select a language, which we've already done once. I'll stick with American English, that's good enough for me. And my keyboard layout, I'm weird, even though I'm Danish, I use the American keyboard layout. It's just easier for programming, in my opinion. I just click next, I'm happy. If you want to use the dark theme, you can just toggle this on, nice and easy on the eyes. Here, it's gonna ask us to create a user. And what you can see here, the user will be an administrator, which is a super user in Linux terms, which it's like an administrator on steroids. You can do a lot more on a Linux machine than you ever can on Windows. Usually, you've done this already during the installation step with the USB plugged in, but Fedora is choosing to do it after the installation. I don't know why. It's very new that they're doing this. You should choose a more secure password than what I've done here, because it's going to give you administrative rights to your computer, meaning you can literally delete your entire system with a single command, and you don't want just anyone to be able to do that. Once you've made your user details, you just click next. Now it's asking for a host name, which is basically the name of your computer on your local network, in case you want to, I don't know, connect to it from another machine. In this case, I'm just gonna name it Fedora vtube. That way it's nice and easy for me to differentiate. Time zone, that's the correct time zone. Your device is now ready, click finish, and you'll be able to sign into your new account. Enjoy Fedora Linux. So we click finish. Yep, we're now at a login screen. There's only one user, so it's selected that one, of course. Enter your password, and you should log right in. Now that we're in Linux proper, you're gonna get this little welcome center screen thingy. Most distros have one of these, where you can read a little bit about what's available, what you can do, what type of settings are available to you, recommended programs, and your app store, which we'll get to. Here, sharing my data, I'm good with disabled. Here on this is specific to Fedora. I highly recommend that you click this button that says enable third-party repositories, and then you have to input your password. This is important for stuff like your NVIDIA drivers, as well as enabling something called Flatpaks, which we will also get to. While it's doing that in the background, we click next, and then it just says enjoy. We click finish. The very first thing I recommend you do after installing your Linux distribution of choice is you open up your terminal. In this case, it's called console. I'm sure if you search for it, you can just write terminal. Oh, terminal. It's gonna find whatever it's called on your distribution. Here it's called console with a K. And you can see the user you're logged into and what the host name we created. Really quickly, I'll go over some simple things in the terminal, such as if you write ls, you list every item in your current directory. CD is for change directory. So if we go to, say, documents, it is case sensitive documents, press enter. Now we're in documents, as you can see right here. In case you're ever in doubt of where you currently are, you can do pwd, that's print working directory. And that is then the full path to where you are. You can type in clear to clear the screen and get a nice little reset. Now, while the terminal is working, you're not gonna be able to interact with it. So for example, if I run the sleep command for 5 seconds, it's gonna be stuck like this. All right, there's no prompt, there's no nothing. As soon as it comes back, like that, now I'm ready to type again. In Linux, it's convention to not give you any output if a command ran successfully. So it's just gonna keep running until you get your prompt back. Now to update, you're gonna run the command sudo, which is a super user do, basically run as administrator. And then because I'm on Fedora, I'll type dnf, and then you just type update. DNF is what's known as a package manager, and it's what you use to install different packages, also known as software or programs. If you decided on a distribution based on Debian, such as Ubuntu or Linux Mint, you would, instead of DNF, you would write apt. And if you, for some reason, decided on an Arch install, you would write pacman-SYU. But that's not important. We're on Fedora, so I'll type DNF update, and then I'll hit enter. It's going to tell me that we're running as administrator, and we should be very careful when we do that. Some commands require you to run as administrator, such as updating. Every time you run a command from the terminal as administrator, it's going to ask you for your password. Now I'll type my password here, and you can see that it doesn't show anything. It has typed it, it's not showing anything for security purposes. So I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to start updating. Some distributions, I believe Linux Mint does actually show you stars, asterisks when you're typing in your password. It's found a bunch of things. It's asking me if we want to install all of this, and you have two options, Y and N. In this case, N is capitalized because that is the default option. If I just press enter, it's going to assume I meant no. On most other distributions, Y will be capitalized. So if you press enter, it's just going to say yes and install. I'm going to hit Y and hit enter. That way it's going to start downloading. As you can see, there's quite a few packages, and it's going to take a hot minute. My update's complete, but we're not quite out of the woods yet. On most distros, you also need to run the command sudo and then your package manager upgrade, which will install the downloaded packages or something. I'm not actually quite sure what the difference is, but you need to run both on most distributions. On Fedora-based distributions, they have been very kind, and because you need to run both all the time, update simply does both. On Ubuntu, I do believe you need to run both at least, and I don't know about many other distros. I'm not all-knowing, I just know a few things. For good measure, because this update was so huge, I do recommend that you reboot your computer real quick, just to make sure everything is in order. So we've seen my desktop environment, that is KDE Plasma, instead of GNOME, which you might have chosen, or Cinnamon if you're on Linux Mint, has been updated. That's okay, I don't need to read about it, but you have the option. I'm just gonna rearrange some stuff down here real quick. Now, for future updates, when you want to update your system again, on KDE Plasma, you have this app called Discover. I do believe on both Mint and Ubuntu, it's called Software. This is your app store, basically, like on your phone or the Microsoft Store, Windows Store, whatever it's called, except it's actually useful. Here you can see what packages need to be updated. I have two here, some Microsoft stuff, and they're both selected. I just click update up here. And this is basically where you'll be doing all of your updates from now on, unless, of course, you want to use your terminal. It crashed. Why? If you want to use your terminal, you should feel free to use your terminal. I think the terminal's cool. Now, there's a couple of things I would need to get working before we get the actual vtubing stuff to work. And the most important thing I need is to get my graphics driver to work. If I open up settings, I go to, where is it? It's about the system. You can see I have two graphics cards. I have an integrated graphics card and I have a dedicated graphics card. Currently, it's using my integrated graphics card, which is not optimal. It's not what I want. So I'm gonna go to my browser. That's strange. The default one on most distros is Firefox, which I'll be using. I'm on Fedora. You might be on something else. So I'm just gonna search for Fedora, NVIDIA, how to. All right, Google, that's fine. Once on this page, I'm just gonna navigate down to installing the drivers. It's gonna ask me if secure boot is enabled. And the way you find that out is to open your terminal. I'll try and minimize the use of the terminal, but sometimes you just have to. A lot of the time there is a GUI app. Anyway, to check the status of secure boot, you do modutil, I believe it's called, --sb-state. And we can see, in my case, secure boot is disabled, so I don't have to worry about it. If your secure boot is enabled, that's up to you to figure out. All right, so now I have to find my graphics card. And I know, we just checked in my settings, I have a GeForce GTX 1070. So I'm gonna look for legacy GTX and then 10, right? 1070. And here's what it wants. It wants me to install all of this. So I'm just gonna copy that, go to the terminal and paste it with Control-Shift-V. I'm gonna hit enter. And then you see it's going to fail. It's going to fail because my install doesn't know where to look for these files on the web, right? It doesn't have access to these repositories at the moment. In order to fix that, there's this nice compilation of things you should do after installing Fedora on GitHub. I'll leave a link to it in the description. And basically, enable third-party repositories in the terminal. Just gonna copy this big old command and paste it into the terminal with Control-Shift-V. Now we're gonna see it's going to install RPM Fusion free and RPM Fusion non-free. Non-free does not mean it costs money. Non-free means it's closed source and proprietary software, right? Basically, you can't read the code. It's not going to cost you anything, but it's not free and open source. That's what it means. You don't have to worry about it. I'm just going to hit yes to install. It skipped something. That's probably fine. I don't need any of this. That's fine. I'm going to update the system. -Y in this case just means say yes to everything, so that you don't have to press Y every once in a while. It's pretty insecure to do so, but it's fine with an update. Nothing to do. Perfect. If we scroll down, you're going to find a section about NVIDIA drivers, in where he's going to tell you about how to install it now that we have enabled the third-party libraries with the previous command. So I'm just going to run this, install whatever he's telling me to install. I've done this before. I know it's trustworthy and secure. It's going to install 77 things. That's probably fine. We're going to say yes to add the OpenPGP key. All right, so that's complete. There's another command for NVIDIA drivers here for CUDA, if you're using DaVinci Resolve and Blender and stuff. I plan to install DaVinci Resolve later, so I'm going to install these right away. Might as well. And now, very importantly, he says to wait for at least 5 minutes because the kernel module is getting built. So we can check if it's done by running this command, and it's giving us an error. In a few minutes, I'll try running the command again, and it should not give an error anymore. If I scroll down a little bit more, there's a whole bunch of media codecs for multimedia playback, of which I would like to install all of them, considering I will be editing videos at some point in the future. So I'm just going to copy this one and install that. Yep, I would like to install FFmpeg. Very important for video editing, especially on Linux. There we go. And if you want some hardware acceleration, you should install these, which sounds pretty neat. Gonna go do that. Now I'm done with everything I want from this man's guide. You can check it out more if you want and read some more stuff. I'm good. I'm gonna close it down. And now I'm gonna add these. I do believe they might have been added already, but I'll do it again just in case. There we go. It's going to skip everything because it's already installed. So now my NVIDIA drivers should be installed properly and will be working after an install. Actually, I'm pressing the up arrow to go up to previous commands. It was this one. If we run that, it gives us not an error anymore, which is exactly what we want. So now, once again, that the graphics driver has been installed, time to reboot so the system actually knows about it. Okay, after I rebooted, it gave me an error telling me an NVIDIA module failed to build, which I believe means I've installed the incorrect driver version for my graphics card. I do believe I need this one specifically. So what I'm going to do is copy that, open up my terminal again, and then I will find where I installed something NVIDIA related. That one. And I'm gonna, instead of installing it, I'm gonna remove it. I click yes. Okay, now that's removed. I'm going to also remove CUDA stuff, that one. And instead, we're gonna go to the how-to guide, grab this, copy that, Control-Shift-V to paste it in the terminal. And I'm also gonna grab this just to install it all in one go. Copy that and paste it in the terminal. Hit enter to install. Fuck, conflicting packages. Right, okay, we'll fix it, So it turns out I had installed the wrong drivers. I've already installed the correct drivers, as you can see with this output, which now says 580 rather than 590 or whatever it said before. Yours, obviously, might say something else, considering your card is probably newer than this one. Anyway, to uninstall this and this, I ran this command, sudo dnf remove, and then nvidia -* In this case, asterisk means anything. So anything that's called NVIDIA dash, whatever it may be, and the same with CUDA. So it removed absolutely everything. And then I reset the NVIDIA driver module just in case. In my case, it didn't really do anything, but just in case. And then I ran auto remove again to remove packages that are not being used anymore. With all the drivers removed, I restarted my computer. I went back to the RPM Fusion how-to, and I installed the correct drivers according to my GPU, which is at 1070, as we discussed. So now that's working. My drivers are working, as you can see if I run the command NVIDIA SMI. Right there, it's being recognized, it's on, whatever. If the drivers weren't installed correctly, this command would not give you any output. Now, I'm not quite out of the woods yet, because I also have an integrated graphics card. And for some reason, Linux really, really, really loves integrated graphics cards. I'm gonna have to force it to use my dedicated graphics card instead. And to do so, we need to open the File Explorer. And if we click this arrow up here, we can then go to the root directory, which is where all of the system stuff is stored. Your user stuff is in home, and then your username. This is the default folder that opened. I'm gonna click the back arrow twice to go back into the root folder. And the file I need to force Linux to use my dedicated graphics card is in etc. And then the file is called environment. I just started typing the word environment and then it selected the file. What we need to do now, it doesn't have a file extension. That's fine. It's a text file. On Linux, you don't need file extensions. It's quite silly. We can open with, and here I want to open it with a text editor. Can we find it if we write text? Okay, right. There's one. Now here I need to type in the following. So that's 2 underscores, glx vendor library name. Of course, everything is case sensitive. And then it's NVIDIA Prime render offload is 1, and GBM backend is NVIDIA-DRM. I'm not gonna pretend to know what any of this means. I just know it works, and I don't know if it'll work for you. I just stole this off the internet. Now, because we're in a system file on Linux, we actually need to edit it as an administrator, or sudo if you want. So if I click save, it's going to ask me for root privileges, or my password. I'm just gonna put that in. And then you saw these turn from red to green, so it's been saved correctly. So now, again, I need to reboot my system really quickly. All of my graphics driver issues have now been solved. Hooray! Next step is to get vtubing to work. Finally, we're here, huh? The easiest way is to open up your app store, as discussed earlier. In this case, it's Discover. Yours might be different depending on your distribution. It actually suggests right here to download Steam. So I'm gonna go to Steam. Now it's gonna tell me a bit of information about this package, such as it is proprietary. This is a launcher for Steam, yada, 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 all this good stuff. Up here, I have the option to install it from Fedora Linux, which is the official Fedora repository where all of Fedora's officially supported packages are, and FlatHub, which is like a universally understood package format for Linux. Basically, any Linux distribution can run a Flatpak. However, if I click it here, it's going to change the page, right? Right here it says, note, this is a community package of Steam gaming platform, not officially supported by Valve. Do with that what you will. It's safe, like it's just a wrapper in the end. I prefer installing Flatpaks personally. You do whatever you want to do, but I'm going to install the Flatpak version and then we'll take it from there. Now that Steam has been downloaded, you can choose to either delete it again straight from here or launch it from here. And it's also, of course, in your application launcher if you search for it with the Windows key or whatever. And you can pin it to, you can add it to favorites, add it to desktop, and pin to the task manager, what have you. If you launch Steam, it's going to give you this weird little error, missing permissions for input devices. If you just click OK, it's going to not bother. It'll launch just fine. You might have to try launching it again, but I can see down here in the task manager that it is working on stuff. There we go, Steam launched. I've now successfully logged into Steam, just as you would on a Windows computer. It's not any different. Now, first things first, I'm going to go to settings. I'm going to go to interface and I'm going to make it startup in my library just because I don't want to open the store every single time. Right, just find VTube Studio as you would normally, and then you're just gonna hit install. We're gonna click install. This is fine, accept the Steam stuff. And what you're gonna see if you go to the downloads page is it's gonna install something that's called Linux Runtime and Proton. Proton is a compatibility layer. Most games are not specifically made to run on Linux, so Valve has created this tool that's gonna run between your game and your computer, right? So it translates what Linux doesn't understand into something Linux does understand, which is how it's gonna work for all of your games, at least the ones installed through Steam. Ultimately, it's not anything you need to worry about. It's just to make your games work on Linux. And everything's done. We're clear. I'll go back to the library. And now we should be able to just launch it as you normally would. Right, we get an error. We just hit OK. We keep hitting OK. It's going to install. It's going to launch. I promise. Okay, I can't actually launch it because VTube Studio is running on a different computer, as you can see, as I'm moving currently. So just give me a second to turn that off. So we launch it, and this time it should work flawlessly. And there you go. It's going to give you the same annoying errors as it usually is. It launches perfectly fine, which is cool. Now that it's launched, I know it's created the files that we need and stuff. So if we right click on VTube Studio in Steam, go to Manage, and go to Browse Local Files. This is the same structure as you saw on Windows when we backed up our model data. So if we go back into VTube Studio Data, Streaming Assets, then this is where you're gonna put your model. Hang on, am I dumb? No, it's in Streaming Assets. And then it's in Live 2D Models. I'm just a silly goober. So the next obvious step is, of course, to download the backup that you made way back when. There we go, that's completed. We open that up and we take our VTube model data, drag it in, and there we go. So we launch VTube Studio again. Now our model should be in the program. Change VTube Studio model, desync VT, and there I am. Perfect, except I'm not being tracked. So if you track your model using a phone, I actually don't know how to set that up. I don't use a phone personally, but you will just do what you usually do. However, if you use a webcam, we do need to go through a few more hoops. It's not that difficult. So let's get tracking working, yeah? So what you need for face tracking, if you're using a webcam, is you go to the store again and you find an application called facetracker. It is this one. I believe it's only available from FlatHub. And so you just click install. Once it's installed, you just simply launch it. And here it is. It has correctly identified my camera, and it's got some tracking settings that you can mess around with if you want. The default worked quite fine for me. This is the resolution the camera is going to track you in, and the number after the @ sign is the frame rate it's going to track you at. So 24 FPS, 30 FPS, 15 FPS, 10, 8, 5, you get it. There's one more little thing we need to do before the face tracking actually works, which is to open up this year's server settings, take a note of the IP address and the port. You don't need to change any of them. They're perfectly fine as they are. But what you need to do is go back into a VTube Studio folder, into Streaming Assets. And in here, you're going to create a new text file. And you want to call it ip.txt. Then you open the text file and you write IP equals, and then you take this IP address, copy it in. And below that, you write port equals, and then this port right here. Save that, Control S. Now to actually turn on the face tracking, you have to click this blue button like that. There's a light on my camera that turns on, at least. If you click the red button, it's gonna stop tracking you. The blue button, it tracks again. So if I relaunch VTube Studio, we open settings, we go to the camera, we turn it on. That's what we do. And there we go. And it's tracking. Now, it's not the greatest frame rate because of course, this computer is quite shit. Next up, I have this controller that I would like to get working. So let's get working on that. I don't know actually if there's any other ways to get it working, but the way I do it anyway with my controller is to install nyarupad. However, nyarupad doesn't exist in the Fedora or FlatHub repository. So instead, we're gonna go to itch.io to download it instead, just like you would on Windows. And here we see there's some various versions. There's the Windows, there's Linux app image, and example models, whatever that is. We click download, pay some money if you desire, and so we download the app image. Great, the app image has been downloaded. If we open up our file explorer, go to downloads, it's right here. But how do we run an app image? We could try clicking on it, we try launching it. Okay, launch it. And there we go. That's working quite fine. It's quite small, but it says could not connect to VTube Studio. That's fine. Currently, the only way to launch this is by clicking it here. If we open up the search bar, we just type in nyarupad, it's not gonna appear. To fix that, we need to go to the store again, the App Store, and find an app called gearlever. No, it's called gearlever. This is a fantastic little piece of software that allows you to manage your app images quite neatly. So we just launch gearlever after installing it like this. And then up here in the left-hand side, we click open to open a new app image. We navigate to where it is. In this case, it's in downloads, nyarupad. We click open, and then here we click move to app menu. And there we go. If we open up the downloads again, you see it's gone. It's no longer here. Instead, it's in the home folder inside of app images. There it is. Now, if we type nyarupad, it's going to appear. So we launch it from here and we get an error again because VTube Studio isn't detected. So let me just real quick relaunch VTube Studio. Next step is to open up settings. And in general settings, we go down to VTube Studio plugins and we enable start API. It's green, so it's running. Then we alt tab, we launch nyarupad. And back in VTube Studio, it's asking if we want to allow nyarupad to access VTube Studio. Of course, we press allow, and there it is. Now nyarupad has a controller. Let me just real quick plug in my controller. If I then turn it on, it should change to Xbox controller, whatever. And you see now it's tracking. It's quite easy. Now that VTube Studio is up and running correctly as we want, the next step is to install OBS, which you will obviously do through the package manager once again. Simply type in OBS and it should appear as one of the first. Obviously, I have already installed it. Otherwise, you would be watching this video through a phone camera, which I don't think you would have appreciated very much. Of course, you can choose between any of the versions that you want. Once it's installed, you can simply open it as you would any other program. Of course, mine is going to give me some warnings because I already have an instance running in the background. So it should look something like this by default. One thing you'll notice immediately when you try to add a new source is there is no game capture source. Supposedly, you can get this working if you go back into Discover here. There's a little add-ons button up here. If you click that and scroll down a bit, you'll find this plugin called OBS VK Capture, which is supposed to add in the game capture. And it does. I just can't get it to work for some reason. Like I can't select any windows to capture. I don't know why. I just can't get it to work. So I've given up on that. And I am simply using screen captures instead and just selecting the window I want. For example, if I open Cauldron here, a game I've been playing quite a lot recently, we just simply select screen capture, add new screen capture, and then it opens up this whole mess. See Cauldron right there. And there we go. It's as easy as that. Usually you would play your games in full screen or borderless windowed, in which case you would not be having these border issues that I'm having right here. But like, it's just to prove a point, right? Like, it works as it should. There's one annoying thing by doing it this way. If I close the window, right, of course it's gonna just freeze, which is fine. If I close OBS and open it again, it's going to have forgotten that I have selected Cauldron on this specific capture source. So for every single screen capture source you have, it's going to pop up with a window, like the selection window, where you select which application you want to capture. It's a bit annoying, but I've come to live with it. Something I found to be stupid easy in Linux when it comes to OBS is separating the audio sources. So like, for example, I can make the stream or the recording or whatever only capture the audio I want so that I can have, for example, a podcast running in the background that's not going to be picked up by OBS. Of course, it'll also allow me to adjust the game volume or my mic volume without affecting, for example, the music volume. To do so, we're going to need to install yet another application, of course. You can simply install this from your software center of choice. and it is called qpwgraph. It's a bit of a mouthful. It looks like this. I'm just going to click on it and install the FlatHub version. Once it's installed, you can just go ahead and launch it. It might be a bit overwhelming at first. Let me just maximize this window. Let me clean up a bit and I'll walk you through what this actually is. I've cleaned up a bit so we have a better overview of what's going on here. What you may have noticed immediately is that these nodes have the names of audio devices or application names. What qpwgraph allows you to do is redirect audio and video sources from any application to any device or other application. I don't know if that was a good explanation, so instead I'm gonna show you. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back into Steam and launch Cauldron again. All right, Cauldron is open and we can now see this new line has been added. If we hold down middle click and pan down here, we can see this is Cauldron. This is the audio that Cauldron is playing, and it's currently outputting that audio into my headphones. And if we then keep looking around, we can see my headphones are outputting their audio into OBS, the desktop audio specifically, which will be this part in the audio mixer. Now my headphones have a plug-in microphone, which is then what's by default going into the microphone in OBS, which is this one. I'm using an external microphone and into another computer for that matter at this moment. So this OBS is not going to be picking up anything on the microphone. So with that, we can now make Cauldron go into its own audio source in OBS. And we can do it quite easy too. You just add a new source, we add a jack input client, I'll just add a new one. Now the number of channels basically decide if you're using mono or stereo audio, where one channel is mono and 2 channels is stereo. I'm gonna stick with stereo for now. Now we have this new thing in our audio mixer called jack input client, and back in qpwgraph, we have it here as well, OBS Studio jack input client. So what I can then do is I can drag the outputs from Cauldron into the jack input client. We'll go back into OBS. You can see the desktop audio and the jack input client are now in sync because they're both listening to the same audio. Now, of course, nobody wants to hear double audio. It's just going to be twice as loud. So in order to remove it from the desktop audio, we can simply highlight these lines going from my headphones into the OBS desktop audio and hitting the delete key. Now the audio in my headphones are no longer being transmitted to OBS, so only Cauldron is currently playing audio from OBS's perspective. Now, because I disconnected my headphones from OBS, I can now go to, for example, YouTube Music, and I can play some music from Ape Escape 3 or whatever. Oh my god, that is loud. And because my headphones are disconnected from OBS, you can't hear this music that I'm currently listening to. You can see it's playing. I can hear it perfectly fine. I'm gonna stop it because I don't actually want to listen to it right now. Of course, you can rename your jack input client to whatever you want, such as custom OBS audio. And you can have as many of them as you want. One important thing I forgot to mention about qpwgraph is it does not autosave. So once you have redirected some audio like this, I highly recommend you go up and hit the save button here. Now it's going to open up your file explorer. You can save it wherever you want. I typically like to have a folder in my home folder where they are. I'm just going to name this one OBS. All right, so if we open up, it's right there, qpwgraph, and it's obs.qpwgraph. Once it's saved, you want to hit this activated button, so that it is it's loaded, so that every time you reboot your computer or relaunch qpwgraph, it's going to automatically load these OBS settings that we have created. Also, this node is still called jack input client, despite the fact that I renamed it to custom OBS audio in OBS. This is fixed whenever you restart OBS, so let me go do that right now. Okay, I restarted OBS and it seems to have mistaken this for being a new node, despite having the correct name now. So let me just drag these into here again and hit the save button. And there we go. Now you could go ahead and add as many jack input clients in OBS as you would want and line them up however you would like in qpwgraph. For example, if we have one here called music or Discord or whatever you could want, right? You can do as much as you want and create as many jack clients as you want and everything is just gonna work. Oh, it mistook this name. That's fun. Can delete that. When you try to close qpwgraph, it's going to give you a warning that it's going to keep running in the system tray, which is of course in your bottom right corner down here. You know, this is pretty general for most applications these days. I'm just going to hit don't show this again. But it would be quite annoying to remember to launch qpwgraph every time you launch your computer, right? Linux makes it quite easy to auto start any programs that you want. I mean, KDE at least does. If we go into system settings and then we up here in the search, we just type in auto. You can see at the very bottom here, it has auto start. We click that, it says no use of specified auto start items. Click the add new. It's right up here in the top right corner. We click add new, we hit application, and then we search for what we want to start. qpwgraph. That's right there. Click OK. Now it'll launch every time we boot up our computer. You can put anything you want here. It really, truly doesn't matter. You could even add scripts for when you log out and when you log in, or custom programs, whatever you want. Another way you may be interested in separating your audio is for editing purposes. Now I know you probably have your own settings that you like in OBS, but I'm going to give you a little bit of a suggestion if you're editing your own videos. I'm just going to quickly open up a new instance of OBS so we can play around with it without messing up the recording. Right. So I have here created my recording profile, but I've kept the default profile intact. If I load up the default profile, we have the default settings enabled. If you want to make editing audio a bit easier for yourself, I would highly recommend exporting these, your custom audio jack clients, whatever, into separate audio tracks. And doing so is quite easy. If we open up the settings and we go to output, of course we have to change from simple to advanced. Then we go to audio. Here we can name different tracks. So I'm just going to go ahead with my names. I usually have stream, I have mic, I have game, I have music, and then I made up like Discord or TeamSpeak, what you might have. And then I have one I call Twitch VOD, which I have not used yet. And remember to click apply to save the settings. This may seem silly because currently OBS doesn't know what to put in these different tracks that I just named. We just click OK to exit out of the settings. In the audio mixer, we go down to options and we go to advanced audio properties. You can see here in the name, we have our custom OBS desktop audio, mic and music. The two ones that we created and the two default ones from OBS. And over here on the far right side, these are the tracks that they are being exported to when you are recording. Let me just uncheck all of these so we have a clean slate to work with. So what you want to keep in mind when you're fiddling with audio tracks like this is to remember what track you want to be what. So if, for example, if we open up settings again for reference, we go to audio, we can see track 1 is stream. Like what would I want the stream to hear? Which one's the mic? Which one's the game? Yada, 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 yada. In this case, I want my stream to hear everything except the desktop audio. That way I can have some private audio for myself if I want without it being picked up by OBS, which was the whole point of custom OBS audio. So for track 1, I'm going to select custom OBS audio, mic, and music. So the stream can hear everything that I want them to hear. Track 2 was the microphone, so I'm just going to tick the microphone on this one. And then track 3 was the gain, which in my case was custom OBS audio, and the music is on track 4. Now I don't have Discord set up, so I'm not going to select anything for track 5. And track 6 was the Twitch VOD. If you have some audio you don't want to stick around in the Twitch VOD, of course you would be separating it out like this. For example, music. If I don't want my music to be saved to Twitch VOD, I will simply select the microphone and the custom OBS audio. And that's basically that. If we close now and open settings again, because I actually forgot in... Is it audio? Nope, it's in output. Here, it actually asks you which track you want to be saved to the Twitch VOD, in which case I will enable that and hit the 6th track. You hit apply, and that's that. Now your audio settings are perfect for fiddling around with what you want to be heard on where, and of course it's easier to edit. VTube Studio works, audio has been separated. The next thing you want to do is probably fiddle around with your microphone and put on a bunch of filters. However, these filters here only apply inside OBS. And Linux makes it super easy to make it system-wide instead. So what you want to do is open up your software center, your app store, whatever you want to call it. And then you want to find an app called VC Effects. It's this one with the logo right here. Now, it has multiple different versions. For this one specifically, I do prefer the regular Fedora Linux one. While this is installing, I'm just going to transfer my microphone from my already set up computer to this computer, so you can very easily tell the difference, especially when we'll be applying new settings and such. Okay, I've swapped over the microphone, and you should immediately be able to tell how much more background noise. And you can hear my chair, you can hear my mouse, you can hear my keyboard, you can hear everything. So what we're going to do is launch Easy Effects, and then we want to go in the top here, we want to go to Input, and you can see here how crazy it's going. At the very bottom, there's Effects. Oh, it froze. That's probably okay. You can see Effects. If we click that and go to the Effects tab, we can add an effect, and these are basically the same effects that you will find in OBS, and some more. So the first one I want is noise reduction. And there we go. Nice and quiet immediately. Another effect I do like is the limiter, which basically just makes it so you can't peak your microphone. Let me just maximize this. Now the default settings don't really fit me. I have 1 millisecond attack and I have a 3 millisecond release, and that's all I have changed, I believe. Right, I have automatic level enabled also with the default settings. Also in noise reduction, the default settings are working quite fine for me. I don't know why the little preview up here stopped working, but OBS is still picking it up, so it should be fine. Yeah, you can find as many effects and add as many effects in here as you could possibly want, such as a de-esser if your S's are bad, a noise gate of sorts, a loudness maximizer, this a pitch, a good one, some good old reverb. You can disable any effects simply by clicking the power button over here. Unfortunately, I have not found a way to toggle an effect globally. For example, the reverb could be fun to enable or disable depending on the situation with a keyboard shortcut, but I have not been able to figure out a way to do so. Once you've added all your effects, you would probably also want to add this to auto starting. So if we just open system settings into auto start, just as we did with qpwgraph, add new application, easy, hello, there it is, easy effects. Okay, and there we go. Now your microphone sounds wonderful every time you boot up your computer. Oh, they're not applied. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that the computer that I've been showing off on so far is too shit to use easy effects and everything else all at the same time. So I don't know how much of the previous footage is actually usable. You can see here on my computer that I use on the day-to-day that it's working just fine. One thing you do need to be aware of when you are using easy effects and qpwgraph at the same time like this is when you open up qpwgraph, it's going to be a mess, to say the least. And it's a mess because every single effect that you have added in easy effects, such as reverb right here, we can see there's a reverb node here and a limiter. And where's the reverb connected to? Here's the noise reduction and auto gain. They're all connected in the order that you have added them in. Rule of thumb, don't touch any of them. You can move them around if you need a bit of a better overview of what's happening, but don't disconnect any of the nodes from one another. You're just gonna give yourself a headache, and it's truly not worth it. We're back on the shit computer, the show-off computer, and there really is only one thing left for a complete vtubing setup, I think, and that is a video editor, in case you're editing your own videos like I am. When it comes to Linux, there really is only two options. You've got the option of Kdenlive, which you can just install and it works out of the box. Of course, you would have to learn Kdenlive, and it does not support hardware acceleration. So it's going to be a bit of an experience. I have made my attempt with Kdenlive and I'm very unhappy with it. The other option available to you on Linux is DaVinci Resolve. This is also a bit of a mess. DaVinci Resolve is the video editor I got in the beginning. It's the one I know how to use, so I'm happy that it's somewhat supported on Linux. I'm gonna go through how I install it, and then you can see all the caveats yourself. First things first is to actually download the installer, which you simply do by hitting the download button, and we are on Linux. Then you fill out your information. With your information filled out, you just hit register and download DaVinci Resolve. Oh, I started too. Once the DaVinci Resolve installer is done downloading, you just open up the downloads folder and unzip it. You can just double click it, whatever. Open it in Arc, which is default in many Linux distributions. Stuff is done extracting. Now, it does come with a helpful little Linux installation instructions HTML. However, most of this is irrelevant because they are only targeting a specific Linux distribution called Rocky, I believe. So most of this is literally unusable for us unless you are using an extremely outdated distribution, which I'm sure no one is interested in. Instead, we're gonna bash our head against the wall and just double click the .run and just launch it. And then it will give us an error. Here it is. It says missing or outdated system packages detected. Please install the following missing packages. So we can just simply do that. We do sudo dnf install apr and zlib. Enter the password and wait for it to do its thing. Yes, we want to install all of this. Now it says complete. We're done installing all of the things, which is perfect. So we can close this error and we can run the installer again. However, it's going to pop up with another error, this time only instructing us to install the zlib package. But we just installed the zlib package. If we try dnf install zlib, like so, the terminal is going to tell us that it is already installed. I'm not entirely sure why DaVinci Resolve can't figure out this specific package, but it can't. So we're going to go around that. In your terminal, you want to go into your downloads folder. So if we do ls, we can see the current directories available to us. We do cd to change directory into downloads, like so. If we do ls again, then we can see all the files here. There's the Linux run, the .run file even. What we're going to do is install DaVinci Resolve while ignoring the package checks. I'm going to do so with this command. Skip package check has to be uppercase and it has to be spaced with underscores. And you set it equal to 1 for it to be true. Then we want to install from a local file on our computer, which we do with / for current directory, and then we enter the file name, which is davinci. It's too long to type, so hit tab to autocomplete. If we keep hitting tab, you can see there's multiple options. So we're going to type in .run ourselves, and we're going to do space -I. I believe that's for install. I'm not too sure, but it works. If we run this command, it's going to ask us if we want to install DaVinci Resolve on this computer. We hit Y for yes and hit enter. Y to agree to the terms and conditions, hit enter. It's going to be a while, and then DaVinci Resolve will be installed on the computer. And there we go. DaVinci Resolve is now installed to /opt/resolve, which we really don't have to worry about too much. And was even kind enough to add a desktop icon. So if we double click on the desktop icon or launch DaVinci Resolve however we want, you can see that the little icon is bouncing next to the mouse cursor, indicating that it is loading, and then it stops and nothing happens. Why does nothing happen? That's because DaVinci Resolve comes with a lot of outdated packages that is packaged neatly together with Resolve. So what it's going to do is going to try and run Resolve with its outdated packages, which are not supported on our modern system. DaVinci Resolve does run with the modern packages that we have on our modern system by default. For example, the ones that we just installed. So what we have to do is tell DaVinci Resolve to not use its own packages, but instead use the system packages that we already have. To do so, you want to open up your file explorer or a terminal if you're more comfortable with that. And then we go to our / directory. We go to opt. We go to Resolve. This is where DaVinci Resolve is installed, as the terminal so kindly told us. In here, you're going to find a folder called libs. This is libraries. You want to right-click this folder and open as administrator, because we're going to be changing some files in here that a regular user is simply not allowed to do. We'll click open as admin, and it's going to ask you for your password. We put that in, and it's going to open up. It says acting as administrator, be careful, which is very true. Be careful, because these are, if you change too many things in here, DaVinci Resolve might break. What you want to do is create a new folder. I'm just going to name this folder disabled. I can spell disabled libraries. Now there are some specific files we want to move in here. The libraries we want to disable is every file called libgio. So this one, or this one, this one, every file called libglib, so this one, this one, this one, every file called libgmodule, so this one, this one, and this one, every file called libgobject, this one, this one, this one, and that's it. All these, how many is that? 12 files. So what you want to do is you want to cut these. You want to go up to where your new folder is, your folder of disabled libraries, open that one and paste them in here. That has removed them from the libs folder and put them into disabled libraries, which DaVinci Resolve does not care about and doesn't check. That way, DaVinci Resolve will now use our system packages instead of the outdated default packages that it comes with. In case you're not sure that you've removed every file that you need to, you can do it through the terminal quite easily by copying the path here, the first slash before opt. Copy this, go to your terminal, cd to change directory, just paste it in with Control-Shift-V. Now we're in libs, and what you then want to do is you want to act as administrator. So you do sudo, and you do mv for move, and then you do libgio asterisk. This asterisk means everything. So it's going to match all files that's called libgio and then anything afterwards, whether that is 2.0, .so, and this one is going to remove all three of these. So we just do that with the rest of the files also. Then the final argument you want to give it is the destination. So where you want to move these files to. And we want to move them into the disabled libraries. So I'm going to hit tab to autocomplete. And we hit enter. It's going to ask you for your password because you're using sudo. And it's going to tell me it couldn't find any files because they are already removed. So that's if you're unsure if you got all the files. Still, DaVinci Resolve is not going to behave exactly how you want. So we're going to need to install a few more packages. We can do sudo dnf install. And then what you want is libxcrypt compat. Just hit enter. And then we should be all good. Now when we try to launch DaVinci Resolve, it should launch perfectly fine. It's a bit small. I'll zoom in for you. And we're gonna hit continue. I'm gonna do some quick setup here. Operating system is Linux, that is correct, and it has a graphics card. All things good so far. Just gonna be editing HD videos. Yeah, home in the videos folder, that's fine. Continue. I want the DaVinci Resolve keyboard shortcuts. DaVinci Resolve has now launched, but everything is a little bit small. For some reason, DaVinci Resolve is not adhering to the resolution scaling that I have set in my system settings, but we can fix that. We just have to close DaVinci Resolve. Oh, we're gonna have to add the close button as well. So as you can see, it's quite a hassle to install DaVinci Resolve. Instead, I'm just gonna right click down here on the taskbar, hit close. So first things first, the scaling. I want DaVinci Resolve to be visible. I want to be able to see what I'm doing. To do that, we open up the system menu down here and we search for DaVinci Resolve. We right click on DaVinci Resolve and then we hit edit application. In here, you want to add some environment variables. Just to make it easier to see, I'm gonna open up a text editor. Kwrite, that's the one. Just so it's a bit easier to see what environment variables I'm putting in here. Gonna write them over here in the text editor first. Of course, I'm also putting them in the description, so you can just copy and paste them. So there's two environment variables we want to put in. We want to put in Qt auto screen scale factor, which I believe enables auto scaling. And we want Qt scale factor 2. This is basically increasing the scale by 200%, I believe. The Qt is a few letters you'll come across a lot in Linux, because that is, I believe it is the HTML equivalent for KDE Plasma, this desktop environment. If you are using GNOME or GNOME, if you want, you will be using something called GTK instead of Qt. Anyway, we got these. I'm gonna put them on the same line, put a space between, and just copy it. And over here in the menu editor, we're gonna paste them into the environment variables section. We're gonna hit save. If we then launch DaVinci Resolve through the menu here, you're gonna see immediately it's a lot bigger. And there we go. Now it's quite a lot easier to see what is going on in the UI. We still do not have the close button, so let's fix that next. To add the close button to DaVinci Resolve, we need to open up the system settings, and then you want to search for window. It's called window rules. In window rules, you want to, in the top right corner, you want to add a new window rule. In the window class section, you want to search for resolve. This is going to make sure the rules that we set here is going to apply only to resolve. And that's basically all you need to change here. In the bottom left corner, you want to add a new property, and we want to add the property called no title bar and frame. We hit that, it's going to be added. Now the rule we want to apply is to force it. And then we're going to move it, we're going to change it to yes. I do believe. It's a bit convoluted and backwards, but we're forcing it to not have no title bar and frame, I believe. You can change the description up here to whatever you want, such as add title bar to davinci resolve. Hit apply to save your settings. And now I believe if we open up davinci resolve again, okay, I did it wrong. I think we might have to force no. Hit apply, open up davinci resolve again. There we go. You can see immediately on this screen even that we now have these it's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it works. We open up a project, it's gonna look just fine. By the way, if you've been opening davinci resolve from the desktop after we added the environment variables, you will still be experiencing the same scaling issues as we did in the very beginning. So what you want to do is actually just remove the desktop shortcut. And if you then search for davinci resolve in your little application menu, you can then add to desktop from here, and then it should work again just fine. Now that you have davinci resolve installed, the next thing you might want to do is actually start editing a video. So I have here a test video that I recorded on my main computer using the same OBS settings that I showed you earlier. And it's still a MKV format because that's how I record. So if we drag that into davinci resolve, it's of course not gonna work because it's an MKV. It's not very edit friendly. So in OBS, what you would usually do is go to File and then Remux your recordings. Click this button and go to where your recordings are. In this case, it's the download. And then we remux that into an MP4, right? So here it is, MP4 format this time. If we drag this into davinci resolve, it's gonna be a bit finicky. You see it is here. There's a single audio track, but it has added all 6 audio tracks and the video is nowhere to be seen. If I play in the editor, no audio is actually going to play. Why is that? That is because if we right click here on the video and we go to details, we scroll down, you can see the audio codec is AAC and the video codec is H.264. A really annoying problem with the free version of davinci resolve on Linux is that it does not support the video codec H.264 or H.265. If you have the studio version, you know, the paid version of davinci resolve, it works just fine, not a problem. However, regardless of whether or not you use the free version or the studio version of davinci resolve on Linux, you simply cannot import audio using the AAC codec. This is quite annoying. So we have one more step that we need to perform before we can start editing our videos in davinci resolve, which is to re-encode our video to a davinci resolve friendly format. Chris Titus, you might have heard of him before, has created a neat little tool called Resolve Linux. I'll put a link to this GitHub page in the description. There's only one file here that I'm really interested in, which is the resolveconvert.sh. This is a shell script, a bash script, if you will, that will run your files, your video files, through FFmpeg and convert them to a DNxHR video format, which is supported in davinci resolve, and it will also change your audio codec to PCM 24-bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to download this file, like so. Now it's in my downloads. Now I don't like that it's in my downloads, so I'm going to drag it over to documents, and I will make a folder called scripts, whatever. Put that in there. Now the thing about shell script is that you will have to run it through your console, your command, your terminal. So first things first, I'm going to, in my downloads folder, I'll create a new folder. I'll call it video. It's just a temporary video. We can delete the MP4 now. It doesn't matter. We can keep the raw MKV that I have recorded in. Move it into the video folder, and in our terminal, we can cd for change directory into downloads, tab to autocomplete, video. We do ls, we can see my Linux test video is in here. And to run the script, that we just downloaded from Chris Titus. To run the script, you need to enter the path to the script. I like to just do the full path. So it's /home, your username, documents, scripts, tab to autocomplete, and then it was called, did I not move it in there? One thing I forgot to do is in documents and script, we downloaded the script. However, it's not yet executable. So if we right click, go to properties, go to permissions, well, we just check off this execute box. Click OK. Now it's executable. We can run it on our computer. We are currently in the folder with the video. So we do the path again. Home, desync, I can spell, desync, documents, case sensitive, script, and resolve convert. So if I hit enter, it's going to run. It's going to convert my video very, very slowly. Let me just open this up so it doesn't spam us. You can see it is re-encoding at this current frame. It's going at 87 frames per second. This is the timestamp of the video that it's currently encoding. And over here is how long it has taken. So for my 32-second video, it took 23 seconds. That's quite all right, I guess. However, the biggest problem with this method I find is if we go into the video folder here, we have the original folder, the original video file, which we can see in the bottom corner of the file explorer. This file is 41.2 megabytes. If we then go into the Resolve Ready folder that Chris Titus's script created for us, we can see this .mov video is 3.3 gigabytes, which is just an insane size difference. And frankly, not worth it to me. If you're making a lot of shorter videos rather than big, large videos, or you have a lot of storage space, I can see that maybe the solution is going to work out for you. But in my case, I do not have an unlimited amount of storage space on my computer. So for a longer video like this one, this solution simply does not work. Anyway, if this solution does work for you, then let's continue. Back in DaVinci Resolve, we can delete the MP4 video that we imported originally, delete all the traces of it. And we can take the newly re-encoded .mov file and drag that in. And we can see the preview up here works. We drag it in here, and then it seemingly just works. We got audio. Bash recently received a custom patch on. We got audio, we got video, everything is working. However, I told you I recorded this with the same audio settings that I showed you earlier in this video. So I know for a fact, if we go to the original MKV video, we open it in a VLC, oh hello, pause it, don't want any audio. If I then go to audio here, audio track, you can see there's supposed to be 6 audio tracks. In DaVinci Resolve, there's only 1. This is incorrect. What happened is Chris Titus's conversion script only took the first audio stream. I don't know why he has made it like that, but I'll show you how to fix it. So we have the script here. We right click it to open with kwrite or Visual Studio Code if you have that, or whatever. Right here on line 237, this if block, immediately after input here, immediately after this line, you want to hit enter and you want to type in -map 0 and then a backslash. What this does basically is tell the script to include every video stream and audio stream. So if we save the file again, if we save this file with the save button or Control S, whatever you want, just for a good measure, I'm going to delete the Resolve Ready folder that was created earlier. I'll clean up DaVinci Resolve now over here. And in the terminal, I'll hit the up arrow to go back to the previous command. Hit enter to run it again. This time it took 27 seconds, but I guess it did have 5 more audio streams to re-encode. So we go back in here, we go to Resolve Ready, we open it in VLC just to check. Stop playing audio. We look in the audio track. You can see it has all 6 tracks. That's perfect. So we go back into DaVinci Resolve and we re-import the new .mov with all of the audio tracks. You'll immediately see that DaVinci Resolve has added 6 audio tracks, but if we drag in the video to the timeline, it still only includes the 1 audio wave. To fix this, you go up into the Edit tab up here, You go down to edit options at the very bottom and simply click automatically create tracks on edit. Now, if we drag the video in again, it's going to have all of our audio tracks. So if we just create some space here real quick, we have the stream, we have the microphone, we have the game, we have music, we have Discord, and then we have the Twitch VOD. So if we play this video as is right now, Crash Bash recently is going to play every audio track. It's going to sound horrible. So if we ungroup, if we unlink them rather, we delete the first one. Oh, sorry. We delete just the first one, which was the stream. Now everything is going to be less Crash Bash recently received a... But I'm still quite loud. You may have been wondering for a while why I have recorded it in this weird ass format. This is a 1920 x 2 by 1080 resolution, which is basically two 1920 by 1080 videos right next to each other. Now I've done this because I can now easily, if I zoom in by 2, so it's twice as zoomed in. Now it's 1920 by 1080, and then I move everything 960 pixels to the right. I delete my my microphone audio, move everything up by a couple of tracks. There we go. We remove all of this. Okay, I have no idea why that's happening. Basically, what I have now is just the gameplay. I don't know why, but if I move this one audio track up, it stops working. I don't know why that's happening. We move back down, it's working again. So what I like to do usually is I plot this in again. We unlink the clips. We will remove the stream. We will remove the game. And we will remove the other 3 audio tracks. We'll link these 2 together. And this one, we will also zoom in by 2. And then we will move it to the left by 960 pixels. And now I have just my face cam. If we move them on top of each other, go into Fusion and find a chroma key. Just gonna do it real quick and dirty, like so. Sure, we've removed the green screen. Let's just say we've removed the green screen. And now I have basically, if we just create a compound clip out of this, call it face cam, whatever. And now what we have is I am able to move my VTuber model around anywhere on the screen without causing issues with the gameplay. Even if I desire, I can even remove my VTuber model and my voice is still here. In fact, the game is a bit loud. Very much forward to playing this disaster of a video game all over again. Well, there we go. I've turned down the volume of the game. So my voice remains loud, which I have not done yet. And that's how I like to do my videos. There is one last little caveat in DaVinci Resolve that I would like to solve with you, and that is if we add in a little title, a text tag, whatever, you might have a font that you really like, and it's a bit troublesome to get it to work, but not too troublesome. So let me just go find a font real quick. Okay, I found some nerd fonts that I like using just because they give you a few more symbols to work with when you are a terminal nerd like I am. So I found this JetBrains Mono nerd font. I'm gonna hit download. Now, the way that you should be installing your fonts on Linux is by going to your home folder. If we, up here in the little menu here, we can enable to show hidden folders. There's also Control-H keyboard shortcut. And then you should have a .local. In this folder, you'll find your user-specific settings and application customizations in case you share your computer with your family and stuff like that. So what you want to do is in .local, in .share, you're going to want to create a new folder and you want to call that fonts. So inside of fonts, we will then extract everything in the nerd font we just downloaded. Oh, actually, I think maybe you want to create a new folder like so, just to have everything collected. Maybe that'll work. We'll extract everything into there. So now I have this new font folder. If we go into system settings, oh, that's system monitor. If we go into system settings and we look for fonts up here in the corner, we should then, if we click the edit button here, if we then type in, what's it called? JetBrains? There it is. There's all our JetBrains fonts that I just installed. Literally all of them. I probably don't need all of these, but it's for demonstration purposes. Back in DaVinci Resolve, you want to go up here in top You click Fusion, you go to Fusion Settings, and then you go to Path Map. And you can see here you have a section for fonts. What you want to do is add a bit of text to this. First of all, you want to add a semicolon to indicate that one argument has ended. The first argument is just your system fonts. The next argument will be the full path to your .local fonts folder, which will be /home/your username /local/share/fonts, and then finish it off with a slash just in case. Then you hit save. I do believe we have to restart DaVinci Resolve, so I will just do that really quick. Right, DaVinci Resolve is restarted. We open up the fonts and let's look for JetBrains. There it is, JetBrains Nerd Font. So now your custom fonts are working as they should. This is all the setup I usually do for DaVinci Resolve on Linux, and I am looking to at some point purchase the studio version just so I don't have to deal with the ridiculous file sizes of re-encoding to a different video codec. Aside from being quite a hassle to install, I think it's working quite well. If this solution doesn't work for you, you have a couple of alternatives, but they're not exactly great. Your first alternative is to simply install and learn to use Kdenlive and live with those issues that's going to bring you. Well, not issues, but like, you know, you're gonna have to get used to using a new video editor. That's always a challenge. The second alternative you have is to dual boot into Windows. This was the solution I ran with for quite a while. But again, I get back into the issues of file sizes where my Windows partition only has so much space. And because I only use it for video editing, of course, my Linux distribution is going to have way more space allocated because that's the one I'm using. If this still doesn't work for you, you have the alternative of simply having an entire secondary computer that you only use for DaVinci Resolve. Of course, this computer would be running Windows, so you won't have all of these issues, right? But this is, of course, an expensive solution, and I'm aware that not everyone can afford to do this. I especially can't. That's why this computer I've been showing things off on is just going to be thrown out because it's simply too shit. A fourth alternative to these DaVinci Resolve issues is to have a Windows 11 virtual machine on your computer. In fact, let me just show you on my main computer. So here I have Virtual Machine Manager, which it does exactly that. So if I if I open this first of all, and then I boot it up. So here I have just a Windows computer. I can maximize this, I can full screen it even. And now it's just a Windows computer. I have DaVinci Resolve installed, but I do not currently have a graphics card for this machine, which is another thing you need to be aware of if you want to go with this solution, is that you need to do some GPU pass-through. GPU pass-through is difficult, especially if you only have a single GPU. It's doable. I haven't gotten it to work. So before I throw out this other computer that I've been showing you things on, I'm gonna gut it for its 1070 card and plug it into my main computer in the hopes of using that for video editing. Not the perfect solution, but it's better than the alternatives in my opinion, especially because I just stumbled upon that card. Anyway, back to the other computer. I've now done everything I can to help you with setting up a video editor, your VTube Studio, your audio separation, and enhancing your microphone. The only thing left that I promised you is to look at some cloud storage integration. First off, let's start with Google Drive. I think maybe that's the one most people are using. So if you open up your software center, this is specifically for KDE Plasma. I don't know about GNOME. Honestly, I'm sorry, but I don't know how to get it working on there. What you need is to download KIO G drive. Fedora comes with this already pre-installed, so if you're using Fedora, you don't have to worry about it. If you're using something else, you may have to find a solution. You will then go into System Settings and search for Accounts. Under Networking, there's Online Accounts. What you then do is you click up here in the top right corner, Add Account. You want to add a Google account, and then it's going to ask you to sign in. Once you've signed in, it's going to ask you if you want KDE Online Accounts to access your information, and you're going to click OK. Or continue. You're gonna tell it what it can do. In this case, I'm just gonna say you can do everything. I'm gonna hit continue. Now it says here, we got Google One. I'm gonna rename that. Now you see here is Google Drive is integrated and YouTube is integrated. So if we open up the File Explorer, We go to network. You can see there's here Google Drive. We click that. Desync VT is the one I just added up here. We open that, and then it says access denied. This is because officially KIO G Drive is unsupported by Google. It used to be fully supported, but Google has decided no more. I can't tell you why, but there is a way around it. Let me show you. On this GitHub page, I will leave a link in the description. There's some instructions to how to do this. Download the script, fix KDE Google integration, make it executable, and run it. Basically what this does is it tricks Google into thinking that you're connecting from a GNOME app, which is still supported. This may be a little bit of a gray area. I don't know. I personally don't really use Google Drive. So do with this what you will. If you scroll down on the page, here's the script that he is telling you to run and download and run. So you click here to get it raw. I'm gonna hit Control A to select everything, Control C to copy. I'm gonna go into my documents, into my scripts. I'm gonna create a new text file. I'm gonna call it fixkde google.sh. I think I accidentally uncopied this, so let me just copy it again. Open this with kwrite, paste in the script, save with Control S, close it, right click, properties, permissions, executable. Okay, we've done that before with the resolve convert. It is now executable. So now we have to run it. To do so, we of course need to open up the terminal. We navigate to where we saved the script, which I did in the script, right? It's here. And then we do /fix tab to autocomplete, enter the password. Please re-add your Google account to verify the fix. Let's go do that. Open up system settings. I still have my accounts. Gonna remove it. Okay. Add account, Google. Now you see it's actually added the GNOME ID parameter thingy right here. So this time it's gonna ask you to sign into GNOME instead of whatever it said before. So after entering your email and password, it's gonna ask you to sign into GNOME and asking if you want GNOME to access these things. You click continue, and again, what GNOME can access and not KDE. So we just hit select all for demonstration purposes. You should probably be a bit more careful with what you allow things to do. It's called Google 2. I would like to rename it. And we open up the file explorer again, go to network, go to Google Drive, and go to desync VT. And now all my things are here. These are the things I have on my Google Drive, which I will show you, I guess. Again, it's a bit of a gray area. Do with that what you will. Perhaps you're not using Google Drive. Perhaps you're using OneDrive if you've come from a Windows environment before. And perhaps you would like to keep your OneDrive subscription and use your cloud storage from there. You can also integrate that into Linux, albeit it is third party. You need to download and install a couple of things for it to work. Let's go through it step by step. So the first step is to go to this GitHub, again in the description, which is the OneDrive client for Linux. You can consider this the backend that will allow your computer to communicate with the OneDrive servers. If you scroll down a bit, you'll reach a getting started with a install guide link. So if you click that, we'll be taken to this table of contents. We click the top one. So what you want to do here is go through this table here with your distribution and version, what have you. In my case, I am using Fedora 44. Oh, it's just Fedora. So what we do is we just run this command in my case. So we open up the terminal again, Control-Shift-V to paste, hit enter your password, say yes, we would like to install. And that should be the OneDrive backend part taken care of. Next step is to get a GUI, a GUI, a graphical user interface, from this GitHub repo. Again, link in the description. This is basically a visual way to manage your accounts and connections and a bunch of settings for your OneDrive. So what you want to do here is scroll up to releases. Here it is. This is the latest release. We click that and it's going to be an app image, which we have installed before. Oh, I completely forgot to mention, if you're interested in the differences between an app image and a Flatpak and a DNF, all that stuff, I will leave a link to a great video talking about this in the description. It's quite short and it's very TikTok-y in the editing department, but it's pretty good. The app image has been downloaded, so now we open up good old trusty gearlever, which we installed quite a while ago at this point. Click open, go to downloads, downloads, and OneDrive GUI. Click open, and click move to app menu, and now we can launch it like we would any other application. The first screen you're going to be met with is like a setup wizard for creating local profiles. Very important. It's not necessarily connected to your actual OneDrive. It checks if you've installed the OneDrive backend, which we did just before. So here I would like to create a new OneDrive profile because I do not have any existing ones from a previous installation. My profile name can be whatever you want it to be, .com or whatever it's called. I don't know. I actually do not have, I don't believe I have a Microsoft account. And then the sync directory. This is the folder where your OneDrive will sync to. Google Drive had its own little network thing, but for Outlook, you're actually downloading the files, I believe. So if we hit browse, this is the home folder. I'm just gonna create a new folder, call it OneDrive, whatever. You can put this wherever you want. It's entirely up to you. You can put it on a separate disk if you so desire. And I'll hit create new profile. This popped up. I'll move that out of the way. The setup wizard is now complete. We hit finish. Now what's going to happen is when you click this play button, it's going to open up a sign-in page here in your browser. What's going to happen when you sign in is it's going to redirect you to a warning page. I can't show you this because as I said, I do not have an account. It's going to redirect you to a warning page. And when you get to that warning page, before it redirects you again, you want to copy the URL. Like the warning is going to say something like something is trying to gain access to your Microsoft account. That's fine. That's what you want. You want to copy the URL quickly before you get redirected. If you don't do it in time, you're just going to have to click the play button again. I'm pretty sure once you sign in and you have that link, this application, the OneDrive GUI, will open a dialog in which you can paste that link, which will allow the application access to synchronize to your OneDrive account. Another thing you might want to do before you close out of this OneDrive GUI is in these settings down here in the cog. You want to enable Start OneDrive GUI Minimized and Start OneDrive GUI Automatically on login. That way you don't have to worry about whether or not the application is running. However, these two settings only start the application. The actual syncing hasn't started automatically. You do that in this middle icon, the person icon. What is it? Profiles. In here, there is a auto sync on GUI startup. You hit that and you click save. And now the program and syncing will start automatically whenever you boot up your computer. And then there are a ton of other settings that you can fiddle around with if you so desire. That's Google Drive and OneDrive. The only other one I can think of is Dropbox. And that is by far the simplest one to get working. What you want to do is head to the Dropbox website. It's very unusual for a Linux installation. Okay, I couldn't figure out how to get to this page from the website itself, but you could go to dropbox.com/install-linux, which will take you to here. It's officially supported on Ubuntu and Fedora, and being on Ubuntu, it will also be on Linux Mint. Being on Fedora, it will probably also be on Bazzite. So I have Fedora 44, so I'll take the 37 or higher. That's done already. So we go to downloads. Okay, after double clicking on the Dropbox installer, I seem to just be infinitely loading in my app store. So I decided to instead just install it through the terminal with a sudo dnf install and then a path to the file. I'm gonna hit yes to install, and there we go. Dropbox installation successfully completed. You can start Dropbox from your application menu. So I'll close the terminal, I'll close my app store. We'll see Dropbox, and then it's going to ask me to sign in. Once again, I do not have a Dropbox account. However, I can see down here in my system tray, Dropbox is hiding away right here. So it has definitely successfully been installed. And I'm assuming from here on out, it's just working. I can also see that OneDrive GUI is here and nothing is syncing. If you want any of this down here to go away, you can just right click on your system tray. You can configure system tray. And here you can simply select what you want shown and what you do not want shown. For example, OneDrive GUI, if I just want it to never be shown, then it's not down here ever. If I select show only in pop-up, that is if I click this arrow here, then OneDrive GUI will be right here. You can do that for any other program that you want. That's all I have for cloud storage. I completely forgot about image editing. If you've gone through the trouble of installing a video editor, you're probably going to upload your videos to YouTube, and those need thumbnails. In the world of Linux, there is no such thing as Photoshop, of course, because the Adobe suite just is not supported at all. But we all know GIMP. This is the solution I've gone with. That's the program I've been using, even on Windows, because I'm poor. If you're used to Photoshop and don't really want to learn how to use GIMP, I can recommend you use photop in your browser, which allows you to it's basically Photoshop in the browser with almost the same keyboard shortcuts. If you're more of the artsy type, there's also Krita, which is a software for drawing. I don't draw myself, so I don't know too much about it. I just know it's the one people recommend on Linux. If you're going to use the free version of DaVinci Resolve on Linux and you're not comfortable with using the terminal and using Chris Titus's converter script, you can instead use Handbrake, which is a graphical user interface for converting videos. It'll also more easily allow you to experiment with different file formats in case DNxHR is not suitable for you. On the other hand, if you're comfortable with using the terminal or you want to get more comfortable using the terminal, it's quite annoying to use Chris Titus's script and having to specify the full path every time. Like, we're currently in my video directory here that we've been working with, and say I want to convert that, it's quite bothersome to go, okay, home, desync, documents, script. It's right there. That's quite annoying. So to make life easier for yourself, you can make a shortcut so that you can call it from anywhere without specifying the path at all. The command for this is simply ln --s. The first argument to this command is the location of the script you want to create a shortcut of. So in this case, it's the Chris Titus script that we downloaded and modified slightly. The next command is where you want to put this shortcut. Most Linux distros can run all their scripts from the same directory. So the directory you want to use is the /user/local/bin. And then you need to specify the file name. This can be anything. But I do recommend that you call it the same as the script. So in this case, it will be resolve_convert, and then leave out the file extension. You don't actually need file extensions in Linux at all, but it's still pretty good to follow conventions. In this case, we're running a bash script. We don't need the file extension. So if we hit enter, I'm gonna get a failed because we're not sudo. Press the up arrow, go to the start and sudo, write in your password, and there we go. Now I can simply type in resolve_convert and hit enter, and it's going to run the script as it would usually, no matter where I'm located in my computer. It finished, so if we just go to the downloads and video, we see Resolve ready, and it's right here at its usual 3.3 gigabyte size. If you forget where this global script launching folder is, and you remember the script name, you can run the command which, followed by the script name, like so, and it'll give you the path to where the script is located. Conversely, if you remember the global script launching location, but you have forgotten the script name, you can instead run the ls/user local bin command, and it'll show you all of your globally accessible scripts. Even more so, you can add the -l argument to your ls command, which will show you what the script is called and where the shortcut is leading to. And that's all I have. I did consider putting in some other software recommendations that are not specifically tied to vtubing, but I think this video is probably long enough as it is. I hope I articulated myself well enough so that you could understand, and I did not necessarily scare you away from Linux. We did use the terminal quite a lot when it came to cloud storage integration and DaVinci Resolve, but I did try to use the terminal as little as possible. I hope I didn't scare you away too much and that you are willing to give Linux a shot, even if you may not want to use it for vtubing, because genuinely Microsoft and Apple are fumbling so hard these last few years. Anyway, go have fun. Reinstall your distro as many times as you want and distro hop to your heart's desire. I'll see you next time for something gaming related, probably.